Hello everyone, we're Superhero Stuff You Should Know, and if you think you know about superheroes and comic books, think again.
We got romance, we got action,
Romance.
we got comedy, we got everything you need, man. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know for all your superhero needs.
I don't know about this romance. What part are you talking about?
We've got all kinds of sketches, and then deep dives on top of that. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
Alright, so come on down to... Wait, why did I say come on down? To Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass to Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come baby come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come, come. Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come.
And welcome to another episode of Horror Movie Night. This week we are talking about 1993's Dark Waters as picked by Scott?
Yes.
Question mark? Yes. I mean,
I
don't have a ton of notes.
Of course I picked it.
I was going to say, I don't have a ton of notes, but one of the few notes I did write said, nothing says a Scott pick like a nun on a cross with blood coming out of their mouth while they growl.
Yeah.
This movie is very low on substance and very high on style.
Yeah, very that.
And I can't decide how I feel about it. So I'm excited for this conversation. But I think what's interesting about this podcast, especially with, well, I would say that this has been the case no matter who our co-host is, but while we all have like crossovers of interests, I think what our go-to version of horror is very different amongst the three of us.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where it's like, like I am top tier is like slasher and giant animal movies for me. Whereas like for Scott, the religious horror is top tier. And I'm not into the religious horror, not from the, like, I could give a shit less about the blasphemy element of it. I just think that sometimes the pacing that comes with a religious horror is a real tough one for me. And I think that this is, I would put this in the category of like, when it was doing the stuff I wanted it to be doing, I was all in. And then like whenever it wasn't doing that stuff, I was just like, all right, how much more time?
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is a brisk movie though, isn't it?
It is. It is a smooth 93 minutes,
which was great because it's so environmental and not environmental. That's not the word I'm looking for. But it's just like it's full of like you just have to feel like you're there type of thing. Like it's not a linear story by any means. Like it's atmospheric, environmental. So yeah, and I think that goes to what Matt's saying. It's like when it's not doing a thing and you just sort of have to like live in it, it feels that way. But I was very thankful that it was only as long as that, which I didn't realize, it's on Tubi as we're talking about it, but it was on that folk horror box set that Severin put out. I like got 10 minutes in on Tubi and I was like, I actually think I own this. And I had the Blu-ray from Severin. It's in that folk horror box set, which was pretty cool.
I also have to throw out there Dark Waters, a title that has been used apparently 1,000 times.
Yeah. This is the 1993 one, not the 2017 or 2009.
There was a 2017 one. There was a 2023 one. There was like there's so many, and half of them are on Tubi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As they should be.
But this was on your list for a while, Scott? Because I remember you talking about this movie, and I had no idea what it was about at all.
it was on, and then I think I put it at the bottom or took it off, and then I was like, what am I doing here?
Do you know how excited I was, though, when I searched Dark Waters and one of the first posters was a big-ass shark, and I said, oh, Scott, you gave me a gift. And then it was like from 2002, and I was like, oh, no.
No, I gave myself a
gift. Then I found the one that was just like a black box with a vague cover, like a vague cross in there. And I said, oh, Jesus Christ.
I hope that we all watched the correct version.
We did. I almost texted it, but I grabbed a Wikipedia because you at least put the year down. So I grabbed a Wikipedia and read the first like paragraph and said, yep, this sounds like the thing I'm currently watching.
I heard something off in the distance beyond.
Did you put a conch up to your ear?
I did. I heard
actually a fish.
I heard the sound of the ocean. What do you got over there?
I have a dogfish head Sequench ale.
Yeah.
It's a session sour. I may not like it, but it sounds like sea wench, and I was like, close enough.
Yeah, that's the first sour that I ever had was that Sequence Ale, and it is a very.
It's good.
Remember, it's super tart. It's like a ghost style. It was nice. I have Outer Lights Lonesome Boatman because of that one guy who's like, nice. I'll fucking take you to the island. Here's my cannibal friend. Don't worry about him.
Yeah, I love the line that guy has. He goes something along the lines of. Oh, I did write it down. Don't mind him. He keeps the other freaks away. Yeah. It's just the way that he delivers that line is fantastic. And I really enjoyed the tight set pieces. I mean, I enjoyed all the set pieces in this film, but the tight ones where they just have somebody above them kind of like dripping water down on their heads, those were the most fun for me because I was like, this woman, the lead actor, she was probably not having a good time making this movie.
Well, so
no shot.
So I did, oh man, I wish I wrote this down. I didn't put it in my notes. I did see that someone that was in this movie actually tried to file a complaint about the treatment on set, but it also had a lot to do with where they were filming. So it says here, the film, perhaps the first Western film to be shot in Ukraine following the collapse of the Soviet Union, was a difficult and troubled one. The system there created many problems, but provided spectacular yet cheap sets and locations that would have been impossible to get in the UK. Yeah. The political situation tried its best to halt production. In the early days when finance was being sought by Bark and Moreau, a coup attempt that saw tanks on the streets of Moscow could not have helped matters worse. There was even another coup at the end of filming in Moscow for dubbing that was where the director was awoken by gunfire.
One coup happening at all is heinous.
Two?
Book ending your production with coups is crazy.
Yeah, in chapter 5 of his autobiography, It's Only a Movie, Mark Carmood, I don't know who he is, but gave a detailed account of his attempts to file a set report on the movie, which were constantly frustrated by travel problems in and around Ukraine. So, yeah, I think it was just an overall nightmare for everyone involved in this one. Now, Scott, the other thing that I noticed with this movie is, like, beloved movie for sure, but kind of I had never heard of this underserviced movie for sure. How did you first discover this particular title?
I don't know. That's a good question. This is the third watch for me, and it finally made sense. So I watched it years ago. I mean, not years and years, but maybe like 5 years ago when I first heard about it. I think I watched a very heavily edited version on YouTube or something like that. And then when it came back around in my list, should I do this? I was like, you know what? I'm really feeling it this summer, so I wanted to do it. And I watched it again. I wasn't entirely paying attention the second time, but I watched it, and I was watching for the gore and the monster parts. I was like, yeah, I think that this would be a fun one to do. I think that would have been probably right after Creature Feature Weekend, because it was on my mind again due to Matt sending me a Colors in the Dark, is it?
I was going to ask if Colors in the Dark had anything to do with this.
Yes, it had a lot to do with it. I don't remember if they mentioned it or if it was just kind of like on my mind, like, oh, I want to do more nun horror. And so I watched it mostly just for the titillating parts, and I was like, I think that we could get a good episode out of it. So went on the list, and then I watched it, like last week or whatever for this recording and this discussion, and I was like, man, I am really glad that I've watched it this many times because it finally makes a bit of sense. Like it's like you have to understand what the concept is that the story is trying to convey so that you can see where they telegraph it, because like Kyle said, it's not very linear. It's very dreamlike. And I think those are cool things. It's a very Italian film.
Yes.
I like that about it too. It's very charming to me.
Yeah.
I would not recommend it to just anybody. Like if I was like, hey, you should watch some nun horror, you should watch some religious horror, I'd be like, go watch The Church. I think that Dark Water is very much like a second tier kind of weirder take on religious horror because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think like for me, when I look at it through the lens of like what we talk about on this show, it's like just shy of being bombastic enough. You know what I mean? Like it's got
I think
those
the ending
like
is
really
bombastic enough.
No, for sure. I like the stuff that I was like more focused on when I was watching it was like dubbing stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like the way that some of the dubbing is, I'm just like, whoa. Like like knowing that there was like a second coup attempt while they were trying to dub it kind of makes sense, because I wonder if there was just like a rush to finish it at that point, because like there's the scene where she hears the baby crying and she goes and walks and finds like the ghost twins, and that baby cry is so long.
Yeah.
It is like a minute and a half of just a kind of bad ADR baby cry in the background. But the bigger one for me, where I was just like, this is a really bad dub job, like almost like hilariously bad dub job, is when the woman is set on fire. And she's like, and it's like clearly a male stunt double on fire running around, but it's still like this woman's voice just being like, oh no. Like,
I think that she keeps yelling her name.
She keeps yelling, I think the name of the demon that Elizabeth is
Vanuchka. Vanuchka.
Yeah, Vanuchka, which is my favorite dance from the Addams Family. But like,
don't give up your double feature yet, man.
I will say there is a lot of movies that could be a double feature
that we have done on this show.
Yeah.
I'm picking one that we have not done.
Yeah, there's so many elements of like films that we have done, films that we haven't done, where I'm like, okay, and I think that just is like that is kind of the vibe also of like a religious horror, is like when you watch like one religious horror, it's like, all right, well, which of the many other do I pick as a double feature? Similar to when you watch like a big shark movie, and it's like, well, there's only so many big shark movies to like pull from. So it's like they kind of just fall into this, like they are very like it is a subgenre of horror that is very specific to what the tropes are that you are going to see when you watch those movies, and like strap in, motherfucker, because you're going to see them. But one thing I've never seen before is the opening of this movie. Opening is rough terms, like in the first like 15 minutes of this movie, where someone is murdered while just a whole gang of nuns are flogging themselves in the catacombs.
So
I'm just like,
fun.
what the fuck is this? Like,
Dude.
Yeah, that's what makes this movie fun to me, is that it really, I mean, if The Church lacks plot, this lacks plot even worse.
yeah.
And I think that that's cool. I don't know why I usually don't defend this kind of thing. And, like, I don't think that this movie is groundbreaking. I don't think that it is. I think that it's a mess, but it's a charming mess to me.
It actually feels older than it is.
Yes, it does.
The idea that this is
What I like about it.
1993 is kind of insane.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
there's
like
also,
an 88 kind of
there's
feel to
also
it.
a few. There's a few more variables happening than you expect from a religious horror. I don't know. I never expect a monster coming out of this religious horror. I never expect this sort of like, I'm sorry, this is definitely an atmospheric movie worth watching. You do have to like pay some attention and sort of like, surrender yourself to the experience. But like we said, it's not very long. But like this monster at the end, this sort of like meat eating thing, this convent of nuns feels a little more cultish. And then we have this like sister search that feels very similar to maybe a double feature I might pick, but also at the same time, like, you don't see where that's going at all. Yeah. Well, so, and to Matt's point of not liking religious horrors because of the pacing issues and sort of like, I would say almost the limitations of it, like, this feels like it does go beyond limitations. And there are a handful of movies in that category that can do this, that are fun. Like, my watch was a toss-up. I don't think I really watched it at the right time. Like, it was like in the afternoon between like my work shift and picking up my son, and like, and it's just like there are sometimes not the right time to watch a movie like this, but man, it was not what I expected at all.
Yeah, well, and like you said though, and I think that this was maybe also what I was implying a little bit, was like you said, like, you really have to pay attention to it. And I think another element of that is like the parts that you're looking for in this movie, they don't use it a lot. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like this monster is like all over the fucking place in the movie. You got to kind of get to that third act to see it, and then be like, okay, this was worth the admission to get to this point,
and it's worth
type
it.
Situation.
I definitely think it's worth it.
I just mean, like, versus like something like The Church, where The Church was like almost every 10 minutes was some like outrageous moment or outrageous kill that was like, all right, you got me locked and loaded. My eyes are glued to this television set to see what the next crazy or I don't think anyone has this written down, so I'm not afraid to say this one out. But like, even early on in this, I was thinking a little bit of like Beyond the Door 3 in a similar vein of like Beyond the Door 3 every 10-15 minutes there was like something crazy that happened that was like, all right, I'm back in for another couple minutes. And like, anytime that you started to feel like you were waning out of it, like something ridiculous would happen. I think this had longer stretches of like waiting for that really iconic hook you back in. Like, it was almost like they saved so much of it for the end, which might have something in common with what I'm picking as my double feature, but we'll get there in due time.
Our summer picks have been very consistent so far. Like, Scott, I feel like
there's like 4 movies we've talked about this summer that work as double features
that are all
already
working here, and I feel like that makes for a fun summer watch for our listeners. August gets a little wonky, but there's a lot of stuff that we've talked about recently that all connects, which has been really fun. It's also melted my brain because sometimes
I like that Kyle essentially on this episode in August 1st has said to the audience, I hope you had fun in June and July because it's going to get real weird.
It's going to get fucking bonkers.
I do have Matt mentioning Beyond the Door 3. This is not as good as Beyond the Door 3 and does not have nearly as much rewatchability.
Few films are.
Yeah, it's true. But here's the thing about you mentioning that, because I wasn't going to in case that was somebody's pick for a double feature, but I mean, whatever. If they want to do it, they can. That movie and Dark Waters feel similar to me in that they were kind of built on the backs of a very questionable financial foundation. I feel like they're a bit exploitative, not in the subgenre way, but more the actual humanistic way, which really stuck with me while I was watching it this time, because I'm like, because I did know that about that it was done in the I didn't remember what country it was, but I did remember that it was after the fall of the USSR, and that they probably took pretty bad advantage of the locals and probably the local government, exactly the same way that they did Beyond the Door 3.
And you can feel it. It's palpable.
You know what's weird? Here's a little tease as well. That theming will continue with my What Did I Watch This Week?
Oh,
actually.
very fun.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it until you said that, Scott, but that is actually true.
Hello, everyone. We're Superhero Stuff You Should Know. And if you think you know about superheroes and comic books, think again.
We got romance. We got action.
Romance.
We got comedy. We got everything you need, man. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know for all your superhero needs.
I don't know about this romance. What part are you talking about?
We've got all kinds of sketches, and then deep dives on top of that. Come on down to Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
All right, so come on down to... Wait, why did I say come on down? To Superhero Stuff You Should Know.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come baby come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come, come. Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come.
You've been lost in the woods for hours now, stumbling around in the dark. You come around the bend and see two people roasting marshmallows over a roaring fire. They see you coming into the clearing and gesture over to pull up a log. Welcome to Campfire Ashes. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jess. Join us as we tell each other our originally written spooky stories around the campfire and then dive into the lore and legends that inspired them. Is it something that goes bump in the night? Is it something menacing lurking past the tree line? Or is it just weird and otherworldly? You'll find it here on Campfire Ashes.
You can find us on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or right here on the Geekscape Network.
Now that we've done enough teasing, are we ready to talk about some double features with this bad
Yeah,
boy?
for sure. Now, I can't promise that this would be... You know what? I'm actually going to... I'll tell you what my original one was after we go through the other ones and why, but I feel like that would be a really rough night. Instead, I'm going to go with The Convent, another Scott pick.
Okay.
Because it's just demonic
I would say much
nuns
more
and-
fun nun movie for
Yes.
me.
Yeah, fun nuns.
There
That's
are
what I like.
none quite as good as that one.
Kyle,
wow.
well, how do you feel about double feature since you were so destroyed by Matt's pun just then?
I have three. No, I have two. I have two. Truly.
Okay.
I'm picking the Sentinel.
God damn it!
Are you serious?
That's
That would
what I
not
wrote
be-
down too.
Okay, you know, I was going to say that would not be fun, but then I forget about the cat party every time. The cat party
Well-
saves the Sentinel.
Well, here's the thing with a Sentinel, and I'm going to assume this is the same thing that you wrote down, Kyle. They both have your lead character kind of taking on the role of the previous leader and losing their sight.
Yeah.
Like they both end with that exact same beat,
Yeah.
and that they both really build to an insane third act, but you're really having to like pace out the ride to get to that third act, right?
You do. I should have maybe gauged, but I think the Sentinel is a good choice. Matt, what was your other one? Because I also have. I don't think you're gonna say what I have my down as my other one, but it would be interesting if you did. It'd be really cool if you did.
I didn't have another one written down at the time because I thought no one else is going to go with the Sentinel. Like, how could, like, this is so dumb. But as we were talking and the more we talked about it, the more I said, you know what, this is actually reminding me of a movie we did a couple months ago, which is Dagon.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of Dagon elements
Yeah.
to it, I think,
Yeah.
as well.
These are all, well, the Sentinel's not a Scott pick, but I mean, I picked two of the, well, three if you include this week's episode. I
so
do
what
have
were
a
the
type.
ones that you passed on?
I passed on Saint Maud because Saint Maud is such a good movie that I don't ever want to watch again. It's A24, and I know I talked about it on the show, but it just feels like it's such a visceral presentation of religious mania.
It's a movie that's weird to call a horror film, and I think that's why
It's
so many horror
psychological
people
horror,
turned
you know?
on it because because it's not a traditional horror movie. It is
No.
way more of a character study of
Yeah.
what being extremely religious can do to a human being.
Yeah.
I kind of did something. I mean, it is more traditionally a horror movie, but I picked a new. I also wrote down Immaculate because I was also like, this feels like sort of going to the convent or to the source at least, and like figuring out like something is not great. I also wrote down. Or did you have another one, Scott? Or did you just have one? You just have
No, but if you're doing Immaculate, I would do First Omen because First Omen blows Immaculate out of the water.
I still have to watch First Omen. I know it's streaming.
I think it's on.
It's streaming
Hulu
now for sure.
I think it's Hulu. Yeah.
And I know it needs a watch.
Well,
but,
I'll watch it too.
and then I also wrote down Alucarda, which is like if we're just talking about like atmospheric like religious horror. There's a lot of imagery in here that reminds me a lot of.
Is that just like a Dracula backwards?
No. Well, so it's a
Alucard is Dracula backwards.
Yeah. Yeah, never knew that until right now.
I only know that because of Castlevania.
Right. It's a Spanish film, and I guess in my mind, I was just like, oh, it's a title that I've never translated. I don't know. I never.
I think Alucard is also the name that gets written on the whiteboard for who called in Monster Squad inquiring about Van Helsing's diary.
Okay. Well,
Okay, Alucarda is a 1977 English language Mexican supernatural horror film. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna watch that. It's got a lady looking very upset, and then it's got an inverted cross like right on like superimposed over the black of her chest.
If I remember correctly, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but if I remember correctly, it's it's two sisters, and there's something supernatural and religious sort of going on about them, and there's a lot of as you'd imagine Catholic imagery, and it's 1977, which always makes for a good time. It's a good year. So it's been a long time since I bought. I remember,
like talking about horror movies like it's fucking wine.
We can absolutely do that.
I mean, like, if we were talking about Catholic horror, the wine is kind of implied.
That's right.
It is the blood of Christ.
It's the blood of Christ.
I am loving this image that popped up when I was searching.
And that's,
oh my God.
Compared to my sort of like my background here, that's the image that reminds that's the one that...
And one of the international titles for it was Sisters of Satan. I mean, that screams film I need to watch.
Yeah. That film hasn't been
that's a Scott pick.
It hasn't been released in a long time. I think was it Code Red or Mondo Macabre put it out on DVD decades ago now, and I don't know if it's ever been re-released, but I remember buying it at Videotech, the video store in Pasadena, on the used DVD shelf, and getting home and having that DVD just be corrupted. Like, it was just not a functional DVD. Certainly not their fault because it was the factory disc, but it was just like, this absolutely blows. I've never seen it since.
Yeah. Well, guys, do you ever want to meet your boys at Horror Movie Night? Well, you get a chance to meet one of them. On September 7th and 8th, I will be at RetroCon in Oaks, Pennsylvania, representing the East Coast branch of Geekscape. I know that our boys at Monster Rally Podcast will be there. I think there's a few other podcasters from Geekscape that'll be showing up throughout the weekend. So come and hang out. RetroCon's definitely a fun convention if you are nostalgic for the 80s and early 90s. Also, go grab some t-shirts from us, hmnpodcast.com. Head us up on Patreon, patreon.com/HMNpodcast, and find us on all of our social medias, HMN Podcast. We are very social on all of them, so it'll be nice to chat with you. Now, hey, everybody, specifically Scott, we'll start with you. What did you watch, read, listen to, etc. that you want to talk about?
So I want to talk about a book I read because it feels like it kind of hits a similar vibe of a seaside horror. It is called The Haar, Haar, and it's by David Sodergren. And it has been on my read list for a long time. It was suggested to me by TikTok. People like, Horror Book Talk suggested it to me. I put it on my Goodreads. That reminds me, I need to update my Goodreads that I finished it. I bought a copy on Amazon for like $11. It was crazy. And I crushed it on Sunday morning. Like, I read it from 6 a.m. until 12 p.m. I want to say, just like straight through. It was super great. It is pulpy horror. As you guys know, I am getting back into my old shit of collecting and reading kind of questionable pulpy paperback horror. I made the great/terrible choice of joining the retro paperbacks, retro horror paperback art group on Facebook. It's like 60,000 members. Ironically, Paul, if you're listening, I caught you on there, buddy. Paul from the UK he commented on one. I was like, I see you. But yeah, so it feels like something that, like Grady Hendrix's Paperbacks from Hell, which is a frustrating book for me because it is definitely bringing the kind of overpriced thought process to these pulpy books. Like, there's stuff that I want to read that isn't on like like Internet Archive or somewhere that I can. I mean, I haven't found copies yet.
It's always going to be in waves, though,
yes,
right? Because I remember when like there were 2 documentaries, and I love both of them. But like 2 documentaries came out about VHS collecting, basically back to back, which was like Adjust Your Tracking and Rewind This. Yeah. They're very similar docs, and for like 7 years following that point, the overall price specifically on horror VHS just was like unreasonable, and then eventually that bubble has like just recently, I think, started to pop. Like, there's still people who are going to ask for outrageous prices.
Deflating. Yeah, I don't think that the VHS market's going to like completely pop, which is fine. Like, I have a small collection. I mean, I don't really collect,
but I think the same thing's going to happen with paperbacks too.
Yeah.
Is like at a certain point, it's the same thing with like. I know this is going to sound really random, but like I stopped buying physical used CDs for a couple of years because at some point they did become collector's items again. And like back in the day, I could go on Amazon and for like $10 buy like 25 albums that people were just selling for like a penny plus shipping. And all of a sudden those CDs were now like $25 to buy like a gently used version of a CD just because it was like, oh, it's out of print, it must be worth something. And no, it tends to take 5 or 6 years for the like, it's out of print, it must be worth something crowd to like realize like no one's buying their shit for that price. And then it gets to normal again. And we're just, we're still in, I would say we're still in the thick of the paperbacks from hell.
I mean, that book only came out like maybe 18 or 24 months ago. I mean, not very long ago. I mean, it's really, I think that the groundswell is happening now. And I mean, some of the prices are crazy. But at the same time, like, I can respect the hustle, you know, like
it is hard. I mean, it is hard to find some of them. I mean, like there is something where it is truly the print quantity of those things, right? Too. So it's like they're not. I know this from horror finds, and we've talked about it. It's like there are things that are like that book's trash, and there's nothing about the book that like a book is trash, and there's nothing of quality like interesting about the book. And we find this a lot probably with some horror VHS too, is like just because like this company did like a run of 1,000, it does make it hard to find, but like what's the value of it?
I mean, half the time, like, okay, even the paperbacks from hell, like, let's be fair, there's a reason why that book is 95% just look at this crazy book cover and not book reviews.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Full force. That's true. It's like that's
what I'm saying though, is that like I think that's so for me, what I'm looking for is crazy covers and silly stories, and like what I'm getting at with David Sodergren is that it feels
that's
like
what you should describe your music as: silly, crazy covers and silly stories.
That's a good dovetail there. I appreciate it. But anyway, so the horror. So David Sodergren is a truly independent publisher. I think that he probably, has fronted the money for a lot of his own production runs, which is cool. I respect the hustle on that as well. I truly enjoyed the read of the horror. The idea of it is this old woman. So he's a Scottish writer. So I'm almost done with the second book that I've purchased from him, and I can talk about that in a couple weeks. But I probably not going to have such a glowing review because there are some problems with it. But I'm also trying to keep in mind he's writing pulp, so there are going to be some things that I don't agree with the decisions. Anyway, in the horror, it's this old woman who lives in Scotland, and it's a seaside town that is basically being bulldozed by a Donald Trump type character who wants to build a golf course. And she is one of the last holdouts of this town, and there are increasingly more violent ways that these thug type guys, these masked men, are trying to basically like rout her from her home. But she comes across a jellyfish monster who, when fed human blood, kind of, or like consumes humans, because like it's got a lot of the Blob 88 to it, but it's also got a lot of the Beach House from, was that 2019 2020, whatever that movie was, whenever that movie came out. He really wears those on his shoulder. He really just kind of trumpets his love of like questionable horror tropes, and it's got a lot of cool things that happen in it. It's like 207 pages, and I just love that. I think that like 250 is my new goal. Is like, if there's a book
that's your 88-minute movie.
Yes,
is your
exactly. I'll
count.
do a 300-pager because that's a 90-minute movie, but a 250 is just so sweet. And so I really enjoyed. I enjoyed reading it because it was almost like just longer than a short story, because I read it in one sitting. I got up and made breakfast for Megan and I, and then came back to bed and laid there until noon and finished it. And so it was fun. I would highly recommend, if you like what horror movie does and talks about, you'll probably like David Sodergren's The Horror.
All right. I'm going to actually bounce off of that. So I also am going to talk about a book that I knocked out in, I think, 2 days. And I actually texted your wife, Megan, and recommended it to her as well. It's a queer YA novel it's a debut novel by Anthony Nerada, I believe it's pronounced, Nerada, called Skater Boy. The story, as he told us on YAOK, was that he was on a road trip with his boyfriend. They were just listening to a mix of 90s music, and the song Skater Boy by Avril Lavigne came on. And as he was sitting there listening to the story, he had this idea of like, well, what about a story about a punk kid who's closeted who falls in love with a ballerina, like a male ballerina at his school, and like crafted this whole book. And my favorite element of the book is that every single chapter title is a parody of a pop punk song lyric. Nice. So like my personal favorite was "I'll Keep You My Flirty Little Secret." But like it's definitely it was a fun read, knocked it out really quickly, highly recommend. And then to tie back to the movie, I want to give a shout out to a documentary that came out maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I actually texted both of you separately about it, called Shirkers.
Yes.
That's on Netflix. So the concept of Shirkers, it's about these girls in, I want to say it was Singapore, who were obsessed with film in the late 80s, early 90s. And they cite movies like Heathers as like some of their favorite films at that time that they were getting from America. And they really wanted to make a movie. So they sign up for this film class that's being taught by this American professor. And he keeps talking about his film career back home, and he empowers them like, we should make a movie together. Let's all get together and make a movie. And they write this movie and they make it, and they show you all these clips, and like, it is an amateur film made by 19-year-old girls. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like this incredible piece of art by any sense of the imagination, but you're like, wow, there's like a lot of style to this. There's a lot of like interesting stuff going on. So they go through this grueling shoot. And as they're talking about this movie, there's people talking about how like no film like this had ever been made there. Like, it was always, if someone was going to make a movie in Singapore, it was some like exploitation movie or some like campy nonsense. But like, these girls were writing a dialogue heavy road trip movie that had like this stylistic flair. They finish the movie. They give all the film canisters to their professor. They all have to go to like other things for the summer. And when they come back, the professor's gone, all their film is gone, and no one can find him. And he just like ran away with the film that they spent like 3 months of their life making. And the film is like 30 years later. After he dies, his widow calls him and is like, hey, we still have those film canisters and they're in like perfect condition.
Whoa.
And that's where the footage that you're seeing is from. But what they do a great job of showing is like, they'll show you like a scene from their movie side by side with like a shot from like a Wes Anderson movie or like Ghost World. And it's like, these girls in 1990 were so ahead of the curve of what was going to become like the visual style of like a late 90s, early 2000s indie movie. And it's kind of heartbreaking. But the reason why I texted Scott about it is that they tracked down other people who worked with this teacher. And the only person that they could find that was willing to talk was the director of the movie The Last Slumber Party, which we covered years ago on this podcast. And he actually gives them a theory and this is as far as I'll go with the movie. It's still, you absolutely need to watch it. It's beautifully put together. But he says, like, I think that he loved to see people's dreams come true until they were just about to come true. And then he got jealous and would sabotage them.
That's a weird form of edging.
What happened,
I don't like that.
Yeah, because he said what happened with me was that we shot this whole movie and he was our DP. And when we got into the editing room, there were 5 canisters of film that were missing for my movie, and they were exclusively the kill scenes, which is like the thing that you sell a horror movie with.
Kyle, have you ever seen The Last Slumber Party?
I'm not.
It
is
so
fascinating.
fun. It's a fun, bad movie.
Kyle, take us home. Ha! Now I can't. You stole Sentinel. I hope I stole Shirkers.
Could you imagine? Like, the one thing I've watched in a month, Matt, is that movie. No, so hey, listen. I don't think I talked about this, but I think I messaged y'all about it apparently like a month ago now. Them, the Scare on Amazon Prime. Did I mention this on the podcast? I think I just talked to you guys about it on the side.
I think you just told us outside of the show, yeah.
Okay. The show fucking rips. Okay, I'm on episode 4, and it's Them is on Amazon Prime, and I'm particularly talking about season 2, which is called Them, the Scare. It's an anthology horror series, so you don't need to watch season 1 to appreciate and watch season 2. And I got into season 2. I think that it was just like right place, right time. I wanted a horror show. I'm familiar with one of the directors, Axel Carolyn, who did some Haunting of Hill House or Haunting of Bly Manor. She might have done both, but she's fantastic, and she's a great horror director, particularly a great horror TV director. The episodes of what she's directed thus far have been great. So, and the story sounded amazing. So, takes place in 1990s LA, amidst the aftermath of Rodney King, and it's talking about the LAPD. There is our lead is a black woman who is a detective, and sort of there's a lot of stigma about her because of a few different things. Obviously, from the PD and from the department that she's working in, there's the systemic racism that is, and anger that is directed at her. And then also from, there's a serial killer who is in Compton, and then from the community in Compton, they're angry at this, not just the police, but now this detective who has come in and, is sort of quote unquote one of them, right? Like they say that in the series, like, that she's turned her back on them and is now working with the enemy, right? And she also has a family. Pam Grier is in the show too, which is great as our lead's mom. And it is like, it's True Detective, it's Candyman, it is Silence of the Lambs, done during the 1990s with a little bit of like sprinklings of like, there's a lot of references that are happening here. There's some Hollywood stuff that's happening because it takes place in LA. There's a lot of like, nitty gritty sort of like underground stuff happening too. And I stopped last night during episode 4. There's a moment where somebody's being interrogated, and it's like, so you can see something clicking in the scene, like you're waiting, like something's gonna happen, like we're following along, and he just turns to the camera and breaks the fourth wall and talks directly to us in this episode 4 that, like, my mouth dropped. I was folding clothes, my mouth dropped. Like, I was like, oh my God, they're doing the thing that you're not supposed to do, and it's absolutely landing. And as you know, me and anybody who's seen The Woodsman, like there's something really special about that to me if it's done right. And I know that there's a lot of room for error to fuck that up. There are a lot of ways to mess that up, and to see it done so well, it made me really happy. It's very scary. It's very tense. Not really sure what's happening yet, but I'm very much enjoying the show. I highly recommend it for somebody seeking, a crime, but also horror related. A lot of references, like, the Axel Caroline directed episode 3, and there's a lot of horror references that you'll be able to spot. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that's pretty high on my list because I think you, Brian, and Barb have all told me you need to watch that. So stay tuned next week for even more horror movie night.
Hello, everyone. We're superhero stuff you should know. And if you think you know about superheroes and comic books, think again.
We got romance. We got action.
Romance?
We got comedy. We got everything you need, man. Come on down to superhero stuff you should know for all your superhero needs.
I don't know about this romance. What part are you talking about?
We've got all kinds of sketches, and then deep dives on top of that. Come on down to superhero stuff you should know.
All right, so come on down to... Wait, why did I say come on down? To superhero stuff you should know.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass to Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come, baby, come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come, come. Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.